Hello, and welcome to She Reads Monthly Podcast, where we interview women writers and authors' books. My name is Laura Foley, and I am your host. Our podcast today features Tamika Somorin and her book, Tequila's Way. I'm going to just tell you a little about Miss Tamika. She is the author who has worked in the field of child welfare, helping children and families who have experienced abuse and neglect for over 20 years. She holds a master's degree in human services. She is a motivational speaker, author, facilitator, and has a natural God-given talent to soothe people in the midst of struggle. She's an active volunteer in her community, partner with Princeton University Student Volunteer Council, where she served for nearly 2 decades as an honorarium speaker. She has served on numerous community-based panels and has opened her home to troubled youth. Tamika is the CEO and owner of Branded Amazing and Market for Miracles, BAM, Branded Amazing and Market for Miracles, LLC, whose mission is to encourage, empower, and to inspire. Tamika is the proud mother of one. Tamika has overcome obstacles outlined in this book and continues to trust the Lord in her journey of self-discovery. Thank you for supporting her passion and helping her check off a major goal on her bucket list, which is this book. Now, Tamika, this was a very powerful book, I felt. There was so much that went on, and yet you never lost your way at any point in time. So if you could tell us a bit about your book and what the purpose of your book was.
Yes. So Tequila's Way initially started out as a journal while I was in an intensive outpatient program just to help me process my feelings. And to back up for just a moment, when I first met with my psychologist, I told her my story totally detached from emotions. And she said to me that she was concerned that I had no feelings, no emotions to the events that occurred in my life. And at some point, I entered into an intensive outpatient program and decided to keep a journal because I felt a journal would be helpful and I wanted to get the most out of the experience. My first day of being in treatment, they spoke about radical acceptance. And I instantly felt angry. I was upset. I was enraged. And that was the beginning of me actually being in touch with my feelings. So as I processed my life and the things that happened, I continued to journal. I wrote for many years. And as I was processing my feelings, I shared it with my psychologist, and she suggested that it become a book. So that's the birth of Tequila's Way. And my purpose in the book was allowing others to see that they're not alone, that as long as you keep faith, that someday, some way, life will get better. It will get better. And that we have a choice. We can stay stuck in it, or we can try and unravel the maze within us for better days.
Now, when you took your journals and all your entries and you were putting it into that book, did you have any struggles in writing it?
I had struggles in reading it. The writing part was easy. It was just getting things out. The struggles came in reading like, wow, this is your life. These are the events that occurred in your life.
And do you find, though, when you're like in writing, that if you're writing about yourself, it's easy, or is it easier to write about somebody else?
Much easier to write about myself. Much easier.
Could you possibly share a little bit about your father and what stands out as your fondest memory of him?
My father was, how do I define him? My hero. He was handsome, intelligent, loving, caring. He spoke with us about the world, and there's a bigger world than we lived in, the importance of education, being the only child the only daughter in the home and the baby. I was spoiled rotten, and my brothers did not quite like me for that. Um, so he was my hero. He was my role model. He told me that life is what you make it. He gave me the foundation of love and of nurturing, and he gave me the hope that as long as I completed education, and as long as forgive me, as long as I worked hard and I believed and had faith, that I could have the life that I wanted.
And do you find now, that like, I know you have a son, that was in the book, that when you're raising your son, that you use some of that foundation that you learned from your father with him?
Definitely. A lot of the foundation I use with my child.
For those who are unfamiliar, could you explain what dialectical behavior therapy is, or DBT?
Yes, that is the behavior, that is therapy that help you to huh, forgive me. That is behavior to help you identify unhealthy ways, to find new coping mechanisms in order to change your current path of thinking or your current thoughts of thinking. So, an example of that would be it's just understanding that two things can be true at the same time, that it doesn't have to be gray entirely. So, one of my best ways of looking at it is I can struggle and I can still have hope, or faking it until I make it, that you just keep moving forward until we're able to move forward and just kind of help you change your patterns of thinking from negative thinking to more positive ways and other ways of looking at your situation.
Now, at one point in time, when you were I think it might have been when you were in the outpatient therapy, that you were asked to take something that was very important to you and rate it, and then take something that wasn't very important to you that maybe you had trouble with and rate that. Do you, looking at your life now, what are some things that maybe if you had to do that assignment again, that in your life now you would give a rating to that are very positive in your life?
Good question. Looking at my life now, I would probably give most of my experiences a high rating. And I would give it a high rating because of it has created me to be who I am today. And without those experiences, I would not be who I am or where I am today.
And do you have anything in your life that you would say, you know what? It's on the lesser end and I'm still struggling with it. And boy, every time I think of this question, I'm just like, I could think of a nice French word to say instead of this assignment that still gets to you.
So the part that still that part will probably be my mental health, PTSD more than anything else. And that would be just in the intrusive memories, whether you want them or not, by going places, by smelling things. So that would probably be the part that I'm like, I wish was different, but I've learned to also cope with it and handle it differently. Did I
And
answer that question correctly?
Yes, no, you did, because I know that
Okay.
sometimes when we're younger and we, whether we willingly or unwillingly, answer these questions, as we get older, it's like we don't think about the questions, but some of them are
Right.
very relevant still to us today. And so it's just wondering if like your answers would change, or, and they have, and your situation has definitely changed since from before.
Yeah. Yes.
So thank you for being able to share that with us. And now you said that you have PTSD, and I know there are other things that, that are going along with that for you. What are some things that maybe you could tell somebody if they were, to have PTSD, or they were being triggered, that they could do to kind of bring themselves down or bring themselves back?
Sure. One of the things would be simply to look up at the sky and maybe visualizing you painting a guitar, or it could be looking at your surrounding and saying aloud, I see a tree, I see a red car, I see a blue truck, and just looking at the things that are around you to get your mind off of that thought. Something else that you can do when you're experiencing it, and this is something that most of us sometimes forget, we do it anyway, but just breathing and taking deeper breaths and reminding ourselves that we are safe and that we are okay.
And I think that's very important too, because I I think people find that when they're in the middle of an episode or PTSD or just being triggered by something, that breathing is like one of the last things they think of,
Mhm.
because they're just so caught up in the feelings and kind of the tenseness. And it's amazing how well breathing does help. Taking a
Yes,
couple of deep belly breaths, or as I sometimes tell people, which I've learned from other people, placing like one hand, on your belly, your right hand on your heart, and just feeling your heartbeat and just breathe, taking a couple breaths in, holding it, and then letting it out. And then eventually the feeling of your own heart slowing down and just that breathing tends to bring people back.
definitely.
What was your experience like with intensive outpatient therapy?
So that was initially, I didn't have a good experience, and that is most likely because I was not in a place to truly wanting to heal. And by the last time, I was determined that I want to heal. So my experience was overall positive. It was also hard. It is extremely hard to heal and to actually have to speak about or relive some of those moments in order to get through them. And what I've learned in the process is that you can't heal it until you allow yourself to feel it. So one of the things that I've learned while in intensive outpatient program, excuse me, is I had to learn to allow myself to feel my feelings and not run from them.
And what is that like, actually actually having to, where you have to sit with your feelings and to really
Initially,
feel
it
them?
felt like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Initially, it felt like hell. Um, I wanted to crawl in the hole and die because it was so much that I had repressed for so many years. And in that process, I've learned how to simply breathe and use some techniques. Ice is another technique, tapping is a technique. I had to really learn to use my skills, my coping skills, in order to work through that feeling. And if it became too intense, I knew to take a cold shower or to reach out to a loved one and even allow myself to actually cry, which was a huge release.
Yeah. I think that's something that a lot of us don't do, because we can handle a lot of things. And as we grow and we get older, we're like, all right, I've handled all this. But crying seems to be, I think, one of the last things that we tend to do. Like,
Yes.
we can get over a lot of things and say a lot of things, and we can do the deep breath or meditation. We can do the tapping, which is a wonderful thing. There are so many things that we can do for us, but then we're still like, I've got it together. Don't cry, don't cry. I've got it together. And after a while, it's like, there's no one here to judge us. So if we need to have a good cry, it should come natural, but we've repressed it for so long. It's just, I think, I don't know, I feel that's one of the last things that we kind of let go and say, okay, this is okay if I cry.
Yes.
You say radical acceptance is the ability to stop fighting reality. And as you stop fighting reality, you suffer less. What are some of the principles of radical acceptance?
So, radical acceptance is you don't have to agree with it for it to be. You simply, I don't like this, but I'm accepting it. It's for me, it was the form of letting go or the serenity prayer,
Yeah.
granting, the strength to change the thing I can, the wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah.
So it was for me, it was, yes, it happened. I don't like that it happened, but I accept that these things happened to me. So, and just acknowledging it in itself was scary, but also empowering because you begin to own it. You own that this is it. This is my life. These are the things that happen. So once you accept it, or the other one is just simply admitting that these are the things that happened and looking at all of your stuff and accepting this is my life. These are the things that have happened. And because these things have happened, what am I going to do about it? I can continuously deny it and pretend as if it doesn't exist and find unhealthy coping mechanisms. Or I can say, you know what? This happened. This hurts like hell. And I'm going to find a solution as opposed to not accepting it and constantly denying it. Because when you deny it, you're not being honest with yourself. And I believe a part of true healing is being able to be honest with yourself.
What was the one thing that you could say when you were younger that you found the most difficult in being honest with yourself? The one thing that was the hardest, maybe?
The one thing, I don't know if I have one thing. One thing when I was younger that was most difficult. Oh, I do. And repeat the question. The most difficult part was acknowledging, would be acknowledging that my parents weren't perfect, or acknowledging that my father was not perfect and he did the best that he could. The other piece is now that I look back retrospectively, I realized that my mother, with all of her flaws, she did the best she could with what she had.
Do you believe that finding peace is possible?
Definitely, definitely, that's it's possible, but the journey there is sometimes the most difficult piece. I heard that healing is in jagged edges. So you get to a place like, oh, this is great. And then here comes another storm. And I realized in doing that and just the process of healing that there is peace and there is hope. And I do not have to suffer as I once did. And not suffering and having peace, I don't need coping mechanisms in order to be okay.
If you could say something, anything you could to your younger self, because the information and what you just said now is so powerful, but if you could say anything to your younger self, what would it be? Any advice that you could have given your younger self?
Don't you dare give up. Trust that life will get better. Find your tribe. And it may feel like hell, but you are exactly where you need to be. Keep going.
Which is beautiful. On page 10, you write, his choice caused damage he could never repair, and I'm the one here in the program. Do you believe there are currently sufficient rehabilitation programs available for individuals convicted of sexual offense?
I do. I do. In fact, one of the books I've just finished speaks about that. It speaks about hurt people hurt people. And I believe that not everyone who abuses people are sick. Chances are something happened to them. And that's just the way they're replaying it. So if I believe if I can heal from all that has occurred to me, if someone truly wants to heal and desire to heal and not to hurt others, it can work. And in it working, I realized that in order for you not to hurt others, you have to first stop hurting yourself. You have to first heal yourself, love yourself, and forgive yourself and others. But until you can do those things, you're going to continue to hurt others in some form or fashion because you're hurting within. So I
Yes.
do believe that it could be possible for those who want to be healed and want to be helped.
do you feel, now you said you feel there are enough programs to help them. Do you feel that that those programs are readily available to people? Or do you feel that we still kind of need to make them known?
I believe just as mental health programs, we need to make them known. And they are not readily available, and there are not enough of programs that are available. And I did not realize there were programs available until a few years ago. So even knowing those things exist, and I'm pretty familiar with public services and agencies, and I had no idea until a few years ago. So having that available, having it known, having it become, or even just to take the stigma off of it.
Yeah.
It's someone hurt someone else. It's that for some, it could be a disease, whatever their reasons are, but taking the stigma off of it and being open and honest.
How do you think we can take the stigma off of that?
Um,
So we can
acceptance,
remove that acceptance?
acceptance, acknowledging. It may take a few brave souls. One of the pieces I've learned in writing Tequila's Way is the amount of people who opened up to me about them being abused, men. And having the male's version of, hey, this happened to me. I did horrible things. I'm not proud of it, but I'm so glad I got help for it. There's heroism in acknowledging that, you know, and being the one to say, I may be ridiculed to the end of time. However, I believe that we don't have to be this way. When I wrote Tequila's Way, I was nervous about how others would respond, about me putting my story on Front Street, all of it. And I still knew and speak with my psychologist is that it's something that needed to be done. That is something that others need to hear. And the response I received from people and saying, you helped me, you changed my life. I've done things differently. You helped me to go and get counseling for my own issues. And I'm just one story. And I've touched at least almost 40,000 lives in some way or another, even if it's through an email or a text message or through a post when people are responding. Um, so if I can share my story and if I can touch in some way or another 40,000 lives, imagine with that one heroic man to say, this is my past. I lay it on the table. However, I want to be different and I'm encouraging you to do the same.
Do you find that depending, because you've lived in several different areas or places, that do you find that like the programs that are out there for people, mental health programs, especially, that depending on where you live, they may have 10 or 15 programs and they're ready, available, and the information is out there for whoever wants it. And if you're from an area that maybe is not as desirable or maybe a lower income bracket, that those things are just kind of kept hidden.
Both. So income and being in look, income is a huge impact on being able to get any type of mental health. Typically, there's a waiting list, 3 to 6 months. Even when you have decent insurance, the services may still be there, and there may be a better tier of service, but there typically still is a waiting list. And with that waiting list, there's the red tape that you go through. There's the interview, there's the back and forth. And what I call red tape sometimes is just being able to, maybe it's not red tape, forgive me. So, not having the quality of services, not having access to those services in a timely fashion, that becomes the greatest issue because now it takes a crisis, God forbid, for them to get into that door. And it's a backdoor way in. For an example, in our area, there's a crisis center. And for that crisis center, as much as I wanted help prior to my breakdown, there was a waiting list. It wasn't until I broke down and had a psychotic break that I was able to get streamlined into services. So maybe that is the red tape I'm referring to. So unless I'm psychotic, I don't get services that I need in a timely fashion. And with regards to the other spectrum of having better health services, it wasn't until I got a decent job working for the state of New Jersey that I was able to access a different type of health care, which also offered me a different type of medication where I was heard differently. If I said, this medication is not quite working for me, these are my side effects. Let's try something else. Whereas when I did not have insurance, it was, well, I didn't feel heard as a doctor. I mean, from the doctor, I felt I was just a number or a patient. Is here's your medicine. Have a good day. A 5 to 10 minute session. But when that bracket changed, I felt heard, developed a relationship, and things were just different regarding mental health and programs. Um, and with that, there are still a few health centers. Like I know that in Trenton, there's a health center called Henry J. Austin. And if you're having a crisis, they do have counselors available almost immediately to speak to you. It may take a little longer for them to speak with you or to get a psychiatrist, but at least if you have immediate need, they can assist you in meeting that need or having someone to speak with.
Because what you mentioned is something that I personally didn't know, but for people that don't have 3 to 6 months to be on a waiting list, because maybe they've teetered to the brink a lot, but at this point in time, they're saying, right, I know I need help. I'm not quite at that point where I'm gonna end it, but I need the help now. And they go in and, they're having that, maybe a panic attack to PTSD and everything that goes along with it. And they say, okay, I'm ready now. They've finally gotten up the courage to go in. And two, maybe because of their background or their culture, there's, seeking help in some cultures is like forbidden. You don't go to
Right.
counseling, you don't air your laundry out there to other people. So they finally get up the courage to break all that and to go in. And then they're told, well, you got to wait 3 to 6 months. I mean, that's
Right.
horrendous that they
Right.
should have to.
And so, yes, it's that. And it's also the piece, as you said, of the cultural differences. So, to give a little background after I had my daughter, I had postpartum depression for a while, which eventually led to postpartum psychosis. Before that psychosis occurred, I went to the hospital at least 2 or 3 times. And I'm like, something's not right. I don't know what's happening. And I'm giving all these symptoms what I now know is to be anxieties, a panic attack. But in that moment, I had no idea because I'd never experienced those things. Went to the hospital 3 times within 1 week. And they kept saying, you're fine, go home, you're fine, go home. CAT scan, so forth and so on. You're fine, go home. It's not a stroke. And it was not until I had a full psychotic episode in the church, mental breakdown in the church, and carried out in an ambulance that I was able to get help. And that was a result of because my anxieties were so bad, I could not sleep at night. So a lack of sleep can also induce psychosis. With that being said, it took me to have the breakdown to then be fast tracked into not only um, the crisis unit, but also into a program afterwards. The last thing I'll say is even while in the crisis unit, I noticed how I was treated, and I felt that it wasn't appropriate treatment. I felt that I was dismissed and that I was not heard. And although I was dealing with reality and then some other state of mind, when I was in my right state of mind, I tried having conversations with people and they dismissed me. So I asked my cousin, I said, can you go, please get my thesis, like, please get these things, to identify who I am and I'm educated. So for an example, they took my blood pressure one day and they said, you don't have a pulse or your blood pressure's too high, it's not registering. And I'm in crisis. And I'm like, if I overreact, then they're going to give me something, So I'm processing this and I'm saying, like, if I don't have a pulse or if my blood pressure's too high, Shouldn't I be downstairs being checked out by a medical physician and not up here? Um, the medications I asked, what am I taking before I take it? And they weren't answering my questions. So I felt even in the crisis unit, I wasn't being heard. And I said, this is who I am. I have a job that I'm already hired. This is where I'm going to. Like this, I have a plan. I lost a child, but in this moment, talk to me because I can have a conversation. And I was ignored so very often. And that in itself was a traumatic experience, not just losing your mind because you lost your daughter, but then being in a place where they should be helping you and they treat you less than a human being because life happened one too many times for you. So um, there's definitely a lack of services. Things should definitely be different, and people are definitely treated different based on not just insurance, but even their nationalities. You know, and then the stigma regarding it. The stigmas are, as you said, you know, talk to God about it. We don't tell our secrets. You just need a good cry. Suck it up and keep it moving. But sometimes people need more than that. Sometimes there is a chemical imbalance and you need help. And even if it's not a chemical imbalance and life is just life in you, sometimes even something to help with anxieties, that it does become overwhelming. But instead of people acknowledging it and radically accepting it, they stay in denial. And then we wonder why we have the painkiller epidemic and we have all these other things happening because people are simply doing their best they can to survive. And if that means numbing, if that means drinking too much or whatever their thing is, in this moment, it beats feeling what I am feeling.
Do you feel though, with all this, that one, yes, I feel there should be people to listen, because that's why they're in that field, to listen and
Right.
to help you instead of just ignoring you. And the fact that, one, your blood pressure was that high that it wasn't registering, that, they should have brought you downstairs. Like you said, they should have been listening to you because you are a human being. Instead of
Mhm.
just, well, this is another person, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the chart, and just send you away. Do you feel that a lot of times people aren't being heard, they're just being given a prescription?
Yes, yes. As when I worked for the state child protection, I this one young lady who was in crisis. I went to see her, and she was a zombie. She was wetting herself, and she's in the crisis unit. And I was like, "Can we do something?" This is not who this young lady is. Her medication is too much. Like, and I've seen that with that young lady, but with so many other people. Part of the reason I believe we have this drug epidemic is that, or this painkiller, is that when they go to doctors, say my leg hurt, my back hurts, here, you know, and just give it to them. Um, Not being heard, my medication's not right, and it's not just for mental health. Look at the number of Black women who die after giving childbirth
Yeah.
because they weren't heard. you know so you have the cultural aspect of it, and then you still have the aspect of it that simply deals with um the dollar. It boils down to the dollar, you know and it's heartbreaking. The last thing I'll say in regards to that is I'm currently in the school system, and I see them of children who are struggling with ADHD and other you know disabilities. Just because the child present this way does not mean that it's ADHD. This child may have other disabilities. And sometimes when it comes to the cognitive function, a lot of them mirror one another. So unless you know about a neurologist, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, and looking at other avenues, most doctors should say, it looks like ADHD, I'm going to give medication without ever looking at the other issues. However, and I'll use my son as an example. Forgive me, my allergies are horrible. I'll use my son as an example. My son was born 1 pound 9 ounces at birth, um, 14 weeks early. He had an interventricular hemorrhage that resolved itself frontal lobe. I was told then that he would have some things, may or may not have some disabilities that won't be shown until like school age.
Yes.
And I was told that it was executive functioning. The number of doctors that I have gone to find out this kid's diagnosis or to have them just compare records. This person saying high functioning autism, this person saying ADHD, this person saying frontal lobe syndrome, like help me understand what this is. The difference is that I had insurance. I was able to pick my own doctor and go to whomever I wanted to, you know, and we were able to begin to narrow down and understand what this kid thing is, you know. Um, but there are so many people who don't have that option.
Yeah.
So it's a huge issue, and I don't think it's going to be fixed anytime soon.
Unfortunately. Now, while you were in school and growing up, I mean, you were bullied a lot. There were, you were treated poorly. There was a lot of things that other students said to you. And at times you didn't attend school because you needed to make money. There were other things that were more important than being at school. Do you feel that more could have been done with the teachers or with the school systems to identify that here you were struggling, kind of maybe not verbally saying it, but you were crying out for help? And whether you came to school or not, or whether the students, were treating you nice or not, didn't seem to be something that they addressed.
I believe it could have been something that the schools could have assisted with. Um, and I also believe that it's a part of our system of care. Even simply calling in to make a referral, that would have taken one phone call to say, hey, we have this young lady, we have some concerns. So everyone saw it, but no one addressed it.
Now, why do you think that is that teachers don't address it? Do you feel that maybe some of them have just been teaching too long and sorry, but you need to retire because you've lost that feeling that you used to have in taking care of the kids and the wanting to help them? Or is it just that people just don't know how to handle things like that, so they just choose not to?
I think is a combination of both. Some of it is I just need to get through this day. And some of it is I don't know how to handle it because sometimes it's uncomfortable to handle someone's pain or to see it and not sure how to handle it. Or just the fear if I call or if I say something, will they retaliate against me?
Yeah.
So, and now working in a school system myself, I see it where you're like, you call a parent to say hi, I want to speak with you about your child, and you get cursed out. And it's like, oh, you know, um, by some. Um, and it's just sometimes a difficult topic that need to be handled. However, we do have the state mandated reporters that as educators, we are state mandated to report. And the flip side of that is I still had a few teachers that may not have reported it, but they may have brought me a bag of clothes or just an extra hug or just made sure in that moment while I was with them emotionally, I was okay.
Tell us about Tequila, and when did she first surface for you?
Tequila is definitely my alter ego. Um, she first surfaced at about 12 or 13, about 12, probably sixth grade. And it was realizing if we don't do something different, we're going to die in this place. That we've been in the same position forever and nothing has changed. So Tequila probably emerged with her friend, a girlfriend of hers, and just seeing how others spoke up for themselves. They were fighters. She was tired of being angry, tired of being hungry, um, tired of being teased. And she felt that it's time for me to do something different. I think my exact words in the book was put two fingers in the air because no one cared about this child, you know? And it became being cold to some extent and survival mode. You know, when we look at Maslow hierarchy of needs, that first level of needs is safety, is food, shelter. You know, their survival needs, and then it's security and it's safety, and none of those needs are being met. So while I had the desire of having more and wanting more, I knew that in order for me to do those things, I had to first find a way to meet my basic needs. And that was the birth of Tequila's way, saying, listen, this has happened to you. Darkness entered into your life at a young age. And after darkness has entered into your life, others continue to take advantage of you. So instead of allowing them to take advantage of you, why don't you take control of it? It's the same thing, except for at least when you do it differently, you get paid for it. You can have something to eat. You can have clean clothes and shoes, you know? So Tequila was the rambunctious, angry teenager, you know, um, who just wanted something more for her life. And by any means necessary, she made an attempt to go after those things.
Reflecting on your current physical environment, what do you feel it might be saying about your internal state?
Oh, that's a good one. So, your current physical environment currently, it says that life is good, that life is okay, that there's a small corner of my desk in my room where I'm like, I got to take care of that because it's 4 or 5 more books in that pile of stuff.
Yeah.
But overall, life is good. You know, most days my beds are made, my kitchens are clean, my cabinets are clean, you know. So it says life is good. And just the opposite of that, when my life is falling apart, I can walk to my house and see, oh, there's that pile of mail sitting there, you know, or in my room. So you just tried on all these clothes and left a huge pile on top of your bed. So, yeah, based on my house today, life is good.
It sounds like it's good. I mean, the glow in your face, the smile, it sounds like, everything is, definitely going well for you.
Yes.
How did it make you feel when your mother finally said, I love you?
Um, that was an amazing feeling. Like it was amazing, but it was also scary. And it was scary because and I still get that same lump in my throat, like, oh God, because you hear these stories of just that, suddenly, life changes and things are good for you and your parents, but then they pass afterwards. So for me, that moment was like, she says she's loved me. I waited my entire life to hear mom say that she loved me, you know? So that was an amazing and terrifying feeling because I knew that she was sick.
And how hard must it have been in reading your story? I mean, I commend you on how you came about the answer, but you and your mother had a really tumultuous relationship. And it
Yes.
seemed like to me in reading your story that it was you that she kind of singled out more so than others. And
Yes.
in the end, you said like you kind of understood all that because she was preparing you for like
Yeah.
battle, preparing you for war. And I thought, wow, because things were so horrific for you. And I thought to me, I don't know if I would have felt that way, that, after going through all that, even getting an I love you, that I still would have said, okay, now I see the benefits of that because it prepared me for battle. If you were to prepare your son, let's say, for things that might get difficult in the future and for battle, how would you go about that?
So, just to mention something else in regards to my mom, um, I realized afterwards that it was also that mirror reflection. You know, the things that bothered her the most about me were reflections of all the things that she had dealt with and wasn't able to process them in a loving way. So it became anger, which translate now to me and my son and how I work with him. So I'm so mindful of who I raised this kid to be and what parent is he receiving? Is he receiving more of my dad or is he receiving more of my mom?
Yeah.
So I'm mindful of a balance. The part that I'll acknowledge is it took me a while, my mother and me, to see weakness in him like that bothered me to no end because Tequila, traumatic child, inner child, is like you can't be weak because the world is not weak. You got to be strong. And in working through my stuff, I realized no, this kid is exactly who he should be, who he is supposed to be. And your job is to keep having conversations with him, when you're right and when you're wrong. So when I'm mean, angry, mama bear, you know, I come back and say, hey, honey, you know what? Let's talk about that. Let's have these conversations. So, with that being said, um, I try not to, I try and be mindful of my past, my mom and my dad, and not to give him that because he doesn't deserve that part.
And that was beautifully said, and very important too, because I think sometimes we can have children and with our experiences, we want them to kind of grow up and be tough or to grow up. We expect them, come on, you've got to suck it up, and take it. Come on, I got to prepare you. And then we have to realize like that things are different now and things are okay. And they're okay the way they are and just kind of support them in that and encourage them in that direction. So it's really incredible. And I love how you said to see if you're at that point, giving them more of what would be your mom or what would be more of your dad.
Yes, yes. And that was the hardest piece for me because growing up in a home where physical abuse was a regular occurrence by mom, you know, um, I knew that that's not what I wanted for my child, you know? I knew that I've always wanted to call him by name and not something else, you know? So even now he's 12, and I'm like, "Hello, my love. Good afternoon, my love," you know? Or my son or my child, like, I don't call him his name often because it's like, "Hello, my love," you know? Because I want, if nothing else, if I've done everything else wrong as a parent, I want him to know that I love you, that I tried my best, and I made an attempt to hug you at least 2 times a day, you know, because I believe that love is the foundation of all things. And even when life happens, if you have that strong foundation of love, when life happens, that inner voice of love will come out and not of criticism.
Yeah. I work with 4 and 5 year olds and I've been working with them for 20 some odd years. And I, always say, hey, bud, or hi, honey, or something like that. And sometimes I have a daughter and she's 25. And sometimes I'll see her and be like, hey, honey, or hey, bud. And she'll look at me like, what? And I'm like, sorry, I forget that I'm not at work, that you're older now. But that kind of makes her laugh in that. But sometimes she does look at me like, okay, mom, I'm now 25. You don't need to call me that.
Right. You're right. That's what he says. Like, all right, whatever.
Now, you have a strong belief in God, and throughout your story, there are many times where you talk about like having gone to church, reciting the Lord's Prayer, and all the different things that you would do and remember and sing in your heart to kind of get you through some tough moments. And those were perfect examples of things that, yeah, people should do to help get themselves through a traumatic or triggering experience or something that might be happening. Do you feel though that because you had mentioned actually in one of your stories that like going into church, you felt like you were being judged and
Mhm.
that these people, were judging you. So therefore, you slit your wrists in front of the church. Do you feel that there are programs in the church that can help you? Or is it that there are no programs in the church because that's kind of something they're afraid of, or maybe they just don't know how to help?
All of the above. And it depends on the church as well. You know, it's finding that church that's a family. And I have not found that quite yet. And it's more about relationships that you build within the church. Um, and there are still those people who are in the church that still do judge. However, what I've learned is that my relationship with God is deeper than any church. And the people who are in church are not a reflection of God, they're a reflection of who they are as individuals, you know? Sometimes we say church is a hospital where we're all hurting in some way and we're there to get healed, hoping to get healed. So there are a few churches that offer a variety of programs. And I found one recently. I still haven't got the nerve to go on a consistent basis just because of my own experience. However, and everyone, I just believe, excuse me, um, there's, forgive me. So if I answer that correctly, what I've learned is more importantly than the church is your relationship with God and how God views you. And what I've learned about God is that He sees you. My view of God is like our children. Your child can do 1,000 things to you that just annoy you, and you're like, oh my gosh, and you're angry for that moment, but you're gonna always want what's best for your child. You're gonna always ensure that your child has their basic needs met, you know, and you insist your child, no, you've messed up, I'm not happy, and I still love you. So, with that being said, I've learned to take out the church piece of it more so and focus on my own relationship with God, you know, and that relationship is built upon all the things that He has brought me through and where I am today. Um, I wish that some churches would do more, but they may look at the social agencies to do more, you know. I'll finally say that when we look at today's society, we look at school and we look at our children, you know, and while they are the way they are, some people say, I blame the parents.
Yeah.
Parents say, oh, I blame the schools. The schools say, I blame the church. The church, I blame the system, you know, so it's everyone's blaming each other and finding ways to do less and not just taking ownership for themselves. You know, I believe that if each one of us take the time to heal ourselves and to work on ourselves and simply, if nothing else, truly love ourselves, there won't be a need for a lot of the things that we need, you know?
Yeah. Because I know I've always learned, when I used to go to church, and I believe in God, but when I used to go to church, I would always hear that God loved us for the mess we are.
Yes.
And I used to think about that. But sometimes you come to church and you've got a mess. There's a lot you're dealing with. And you go in to find God and you say, all right, God, I'm coming. This is the mess I'm in. And then you find that, hey, the church doesn't see that. They're not
Hmm.
seeing what you're struggling with. Or the other women are kind of saying hi as they come in, but they're too busy, kneeling when they're supposed to kneel and praying when they're supposed to pray. Oh, now we got to stand up. Oh, now we
Right.
sit and listen. Now we got to kneel. And then everyone's too busy thinking, all right, well, I got all these things to do. There's 5 minutes left of church. I'm gonna leave now because the parking lot's packed and I need to get out. And then nobody sees you and nobody hears you.
Right.
Nobody's able to help you for the mess you're in. So you wind up leaving thinking, well, God said He's supposed to love me for the mess I'm in. And I went in ready to bear everything, but I couldn't find Him. You know,
Right. Right. And that was the toughest part. I think a part of my book, I said, I used to sit at my window looking for Superman to just come and save us, right? And I had to realize that wait, that Superman's not without, he's within. You have to save yourself, you know?
yeah,
And I found that when I depended, we call it church hurt, when I looked for people to help me, to save me, more times than not, I was disappointed. I was left empty, I was left hurting, you know? And I had to realize that, you know what, God, this is personal. This is me and you.
walk us through that poignant moment when Pastor Armstrong prayed for you. Did it change your life? And if so, how?
Oh my gosh, Pastor Armstrong. Yeah, that was like a renewed hope, renewed faith, you know? Um, that was probably one of the darkest days of my life, and I was dark, and I know that if I had not met him at City Hall that day, I don't know if I would be here today. I don't know if I would be here today. So he definitely had a huge impact on my life. And he's one of the few pastors that I still stay in contact with today.
Because to me, that part of the story was very amazing to me, that here he was praying with a bunch of people outside, and you came up to him and, you asked for prayer, and he didn't turn you away, or he didn't get kind of nervous, like, who is this woman
Right.
rushing up to me? And he
Right.
actually prayed for you right there on the spot. He didn't say, oh, well, we can't
Right.
go there, let's go somewhere, or not at
Right.
that
On the
time.
street. And he didn't give me judgmental eyes or like, who are you?
Yeah,
It was just, it was there. It was there. And that definitely was, and I believe I told him on a few occasions, like, you don't know what that did for me. Like, you have no idea, because I was lost. I was lost in my emotions, lost in, you know, the loss of a child and figuring out my life, and that with all of the past life that has occurred. And it was, everything was on me at that moment. And I just felt that it was too heavy for me to bear. And I didn't want to bear anymore. So that was definitely a huge impact on just having him stop and pray with a sincere agape love.
yeah. At the end of your book, you talk about your solid relationship with God. What words of encouragement can you give to someone who does not see the promise in God's word?
You have to look at your totem poles. That in life we go through so many things, you know. Our first breakup, I don't know, whatever we consider our failures. And my failures, may not be your failures, or we may not compare them the same, but whatever our hurts are, whatever we cried about and hope that we could receive release from. Look at our totem poles. Each time we prayed to God in the past and how He has brought us through those things. And even though life may not look the way you want it to look or you think it should look at all the things that you have overcome and ask yourself, how did I make it through these things? Especially if you prayed and you had some faith. So I would say just keep holding on, keep talking, keep believing that life will get better, and just know that God will never leave you nor forsake you. And even when your thoughts are saying He's not here, that's just that inner voice who's living on all the things that have gone wrong. But your conscious voice is the one who's saying to you, no, God, I believe you. I hear you. Or God, I trust you. But that inner critic in you is saying, yeah, last night, you know? So
Yeah,
you have to start to silence your inner critics and treat them as um, a familiar stranger. All right, I need you to quiet down and know that this voice that is speaking, that is coming out of your mouth, is the true voice, that you want to keep changing your negative thoughts to positive thoughts. To make it clear is, when life is going weird for me and my inner critic's like, here we are again. This is happening again. Life is going crazy again. Yes, life is happening again, and we're going to make it because we made it before. So that's what I would say, is just keep believing in you, keep using your words, keep speaking your words loudly. When an inner critic says no, write your words down, read them to yourselves, and most importantly, think of all that God has brought you from, and say, God, I don't know how, I don't know where, I don't know when, but I know you're going to do this for me. So just give me the strength to make it through this day, and let that be a daily prayer until it happens. Because if I can live the life that I have lived, and going through all that I've gone through, there's no way on God's green earth should I be here today in my right mind, you know, and not in some other stuck position, without having some trust, having some faith in God. The final thing I'll say is, don't judge yourself, whatever state you're in. You know, when I was drinking and partying with my friends, God, this is where I am today, but I'm not going to judge myself. I want better, but this is where I am today. and simply be gentle with yourself because God is gentle with us.
If there was one like passage from the Bible or one psalm or something from the Bible that helps you get through the day when something gets hard, what would it be? Could you share that with us?
There's two, but the one is the Lord is my shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd, you know? And now I'm like, oh my gosh, what is it? Because I can't think of it. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He leads me beside the still water, you know?
Yeah,
Um, and I'm not gonna get it right, forgive me, but though I walk through the shadow of the valley, it's a shadow. It would not be in order for you to see a shadow, there has to be some sun. It's
yeah,
just a shadow, you know? So instead of
yes.
looking down at the shadows, look up at the light. So yes, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Psalms 23.
And if you could sum up your life now in a song, what song would it be?
And a song, oh gosh. Um, oh gosh, and a song. Um, Suddenly, suddenly, life has new meaning to me, right? I have
Yes,
no idea who's singing it, but there's beauty up above, things I've never taken notice of. Wake up and suddenly you're in love, you know? And that's just waking up and realizing that, wow, baby girl, you're good. You made it, you know? And finally being in a place where I can love myself,
yeah.
the good, the bad, and the ugly, you know? So that would be it.
And it's funny, as soon as you said that, and I'm a little bit older, so I'm gonna date myself, and if you don't know it, you can always, look for it later. But there was a Barry Manilow song, and there was one line in it where he goes, "Looks like we made it." Well,
Yes.
I can't
Yes.
sing at the moment because I've been with kids all day, so my voice is a little out. But when he says that, it's just like it's true. You have made it, and you've
Yes.
come so far. What do you believe the future holds for Tamika?
Oh, what does the future not hold for Tamika? Um, so I'm working on my teaching certification, so I will become a certified teacher. Um, Continued health and wellness, to publish a few more books, to continue to be a motivational speaker, to continue to inspire. And my husband's coming at some point. Don't know when, but he's coming. And like just to keep growing, more than anything, to keep growing and not to be stagnant or stuck.
And I thank you so much for everything that you have shared with us. It was really what a 360 from where you were, and I am and where you are now. But I love the fact that you're becoming a teacher. You know, I think that is just amazing because there, when you were growing up, you needed teachers, and
Yes.
they weren't always there for you. And now you have maybe fortunately or unfortunately had all that experience. I think that can make you into such a powerful teacher because you'll notice the signs and the things that kids need, before other teachers might. And I think that's going to make you a really powerful teacher.
Yes. And that's what I've been told so far is that I'm different. Like that's because of that. And that's why I'm like, it makes sense. It just makes sense.
Is there a certain age group of kids that you'd like to teach?
Well, I've been a permanent sub for the last 2 years and Um, middle school, so 13 was like 12 to 14.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And it's that age where, you know, that age, that teenage, that preteen,
yeah,
adolescent, full of hormones, full of rage, tequila way days.
yeah.
And that's what I see. I don't see disrespectful kids, you know. I see kids who are figuring out their way and fighting the best way that they know how. So yeah,
Well, thank you so much for joining us. It was
thank
really a
you.
pleasure, hearing your story. Again, I recommend anyone who's out there who has not read Tequila's Way to please read it, because there is so much in there, so much that we can learn from and we can do to help other people by reading her story. And I'm very excited to hear that you're thinking of writing more books, because definitely
Yes,
I would love to read them. This was a hard read, but it's one that people need to read. They need to know that these kind of things happen. And I think it's good for churches and for teachers and for people in the healthcare system to read, to know where they're lacking, because there
yes,
definitely is a lot of lack. And with
yes,
everything that's been going on, there's so much more need, but their needs aren't being met. And so how can we
right,
change that? And how can we turn that around so that people are more aware, they're more educated, and they know now, and now I know how to help, instead of hiding behind, their badge, their name,
right,
their
right.
title behind the church, where they can say, all right, I'm not worried about what people are gonna think about me, but I'm gonna step up and I'm gonna help. And I'm gonna say, this is a problem, and I'm gonna walk right beside you with it and help you with it.
Exactly, exactly. I totally agree.
So thank you so much. It was such a pleasure, Tamika. Thank you so
Thank you. I
much.
truly appreciate this. I definitely do.
Well, thank you for being so willing to share your story with us on the She Reads podcasts. And thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. You as well.